Not trying to be funny, not trying to get a laugh. Don't want anybody to have the worst day at their job.
You've got a job as a teacher. Why do you need more money?
And I make nothing. Zero. Zilch.
Guess what, Mr. Krabs? Me and Squidward are gonna go on strike!
Hi, Lyndie.
Hi, Marissa.
Hello, everybody. OCO. And welcome to the RIVERHAWK Hired podcast featuring us. This is going to be the third part of our interviewing miniseries, where we talk about tips, like the do's. And later in the next and last episode, we'll go over the don'ts.
Yeah, for interviewing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In our previous episode, we talked about how to prepare. So we kind of got into some of the tips, the things you should do. Mm-hmm. But we're going to get a little bit more specific.
Yeah.
So, Lyndie, in the last episode, you mentioned like what questions you should ask at the end of an interview. You said to always come with 2 or 3 questions. I know the answer to this, but what are the kind of questions?
Yeah, so like company culture is a really big one. Okay. So one of the ones that I've asked previously that I think is a pretty good one is like, what skills does it take to be successful within this position? Because it gives you an idea of like what's going to be expected within the position, and not necessarily like in job descriptions, right? It's going to give you skills, but maybe you could frame it in, aside from the skills that are listed in the job description, such as whatever, what other skills do you feel it takes to be successful? Or you can ask about like follow-up, obviously, but don't make that your only question. Yeah. And don't ever ask about salary. Don't ever ask about salary in an interview.
I like, honestly, anything that they like give you as compensation, so that includes benefits too,
right?
Vacation. Don't talk about that kind of stuff.
Time off. Any of that.
Because that's, I mean, we talked about it, that first interview, it's like your first date, and you don't want to get too crazy with asking those questions of like, how many grandchildren do you think you'll have in the future? It's like, we want to take a step back, take baby steps, and then once they get a little bit more serious about you being a candidate that they're actually having in mind, I always like to tell people, just let them initiate that kind of conversation.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you can negotiate from there.
Yeah.
Because once they give it to you, it's not like you have to say yes or no, like immediately. I'm sure people have deadlines and things like that to meet, and they'll let you know what those deadlines are. But that's when you can say, oh, let's, negotiate. Let's compare different things.
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah, that comes after the offer. I would say another one that you could ask, again, and this is if it's something that you're prepared for an answer for, is there anything that I mentioned or anything maybe that I didn't bring up in the interview that you like feel is a concern? So you can ask something like that. Again,
concern, or like that you would just like to hear.
Hear more about. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So just different things like that. I would say the biggest thing with interviews is, yes, they are interviewing you, but you are also interviewing them. Yep. And so it's a way for you to figure out if this is if this is the right fit for you. So any kind of questions that you can ask that kind of have to do with like the culture or what a day-to-day is like. You could ask what a day-to-day looks like. Obviously, that's another really good question. That it's a very safe one and not a bad one to ask either. Oh yeah. But yeah, I would say 2 or 3. And even like, if you have an initial interview, have questions prepared. And if you get a second interview, also have questions prepared that are different than what you asked in your initial interview. But yeah, if you focus too much on like follow up, or if you're like, I don't have anything, I'm good, right? Just bring something
helps you stick in people's minds.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
having that back and forth kind of stuff.
Yep.
So other things is how to answer
questions.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's different ways to answer different questions, right? For tell me about yourself, you're probably always going to get that question, like always. What I recommend, again, you don't have to follow this, but I think it's just a good model to have, is think of it in like past, present, future. So what did you do? What are you doing currently? And maybe what do you hope to do in the future? Yeah. And how does that relate to your life in a professional sense? Mm-hmm. So when they say, tell me about yourself, it doesn't mean that you can't share what your hobbies are, but that's not necessarily what they're looking for. Yeah. What does your professional life look like? Tell me about that. What does that look like? What are your experiences? Yeah.
And if you can add those sprinkles of like, I'm a single mom who works 2 jobs, who loves her kids and never stops.
Yeah.
But like legitimately, you can be like, by day, I am the assistant director of career services, but whenever I get home, I love on my 2 Australian shepherds and play Animal Crossing. Like something light. Do not get into it.
Yeah.
Too often do people go, well, my grandma came here on a boat, and then it's like, that's a lot of backstory.
Yes.
And you want to keep things concise and relevant.
Yes.
And so if you're in a job interview, make your answers job centered.
Yes. And don't overshare. I know that we're talking about don'ts later, but I've been in a lot of interviews where people have almost given too much information, like personal information, and it can make people very uncomfortable. So you don't have to tell your whole life story, right?
Yeah.
And you need to be careful with some of the questions that you're going to be asked. So like, give us an example of a previous supervisor that maybe you didn't get along with. What was that like, and how did you handle that situation? The way you respond is going to say a lot about you, right? And when you answer questions in a way that's very accusatory, or you badmouth your previous positions, right? That looks bad on you. It doesn't look bad on them. I promise. Every single time it's going to look bad on you because you're the one that's leaving the position. And even if you do have like these differences, or maybe that is like kind of a sore subject, try to find a professional way to word things that isn't just like, well, this person was the worst person I've ever worked for, and here's why, right?
Instead, go, my values didn't line up with the values of, XYZ.
Yes.
Like, come up with that professional way. And in the realm of, coming up with, a positive way to spin things, a non-negative way to spin things, whenever you are talking and bringing up your answers, I know sometimes those questions, they kind of hit you by surprise.
Yeah.
But don't ponder too long when you answer.
Well, and
sometimes it can get a little awkward, or if you're just sitting there going, for a long time, that gets weird and hard, and that kind of goes into etiquette, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But
and ask for clarification. And one way is, if you are trying to think of an answer, just ask, can you repeat that question?
Oh, I did that so much for my interview,
and that's position. Okay. That's totally okay. And especially if it's like a 2-part question.
Yeah.
But I think we've all been there where maybe we talk for too long and then we're like, okay, wait, what was the question, or what was the answer to that? So that's something to keep in mind too. Be very aware of timing and what that looks like. Yes. That doesn't mean give 1-word answers and you're done, right? Give a good, well-rounded answer, but don't go so long that you're just kind of rambling, because people start to lose interest after about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So, another like common question that we typically ask in like our mock interviews that you will probably be asked are like strengths and weaknesses. So if you are asked about weaknesses, a lot of people, they know their strengths, right? They're like, yeah, I'm really good at this and I'm really good at this. But I've been in interviews where you're asked what your weaknesses are and people go, I don't know.
Yeah.
You have a weakness. We are all human. None of us are perfect. That's okay.
Yeah.
But answer in an honest way, but talk about how are you combating that weakness? Like, what are you doing to work on that? So if you struggle with organization, then what are some ways that you are trying to get better about that, right? Or do you keep reminders on your phone? Do you utilize sticky notes? Have you started using a planner, right? What does that look like? And so kind of combating that with, yes, I have a weakness, but here's what I'm doing to work on that weakness. Here's what I'm doing to improve myself. That's a great way to kind of spin it and still make yourself look really good.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm trying to think of other questions that just
need
a different kind of answer style.
So like situationally based questions, I always recommend the STAR method. Yeah. So like a lot of times you'll get, tell me about a time when blah, 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 right? How would you handle a situation if blah, 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 right? And so STAR method is a really great way for you to like kind of cover every element of that answer. So just to kind of tell you what that stands for, because I wrote it down so I would remember. The S stands for situation. So explain what the situation was. Who was there? What happened, right? What was the incident? Whatever. The T is for task. So what was the task that you had to do within this situation? What were you trying to accomplish? The A is action. So what was the action you took to complete that task? What did that look like? Were there other people involved? Were you just working on this as an individual, right? And then R is result. So what were the results of that action, right? What did that result in? What did that look like? What was the outcome, right? Kind of like how we tell people to formulate their bullet statements, right? With the action, verb, job, duty, outcome. That outcome is really important because it really shows like those skills and really like how you accomplish those goals. And, you know, were you utilizing critical thinking? Were you utilizing professionalism, communication, all of those different elements? So STAR method is a really great way to answer those, like, tell me about a time when you did this, or
I think it's even something that you can keep in mind for just those regular, because sometimes those situational questions aren't asked in like a tell me about a time kind of format. And so if it's like, what kind of experience do you have in classrooms? Yeah. Or do you have experience in classrooms? You could just say yes.
Yes. But give examples. Give some context. Stuff. Yeah. People want to see how you're utilizing your skills. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
But the STAR method is just a good thing to keep in mind when, especially whenever you're nervous, because I just feel like it's a good guide of how do I answer? It's already there for you. So remember that. Say it one more time. What does it stand for?
Situation, task, action, result.
Okay. See, I don't even remember what STAR stands for.
Sometimes you'll get those like kind of silly off the wall questions. Jeremy and I were kind of having this conversation the other day. Like I think when I interviewed for the counselor position here, they asked me, if you could be a kind of cake, what would you be and why? And I said funfetti. And it's because they may seem really plain, but when you cut into it, it's really colorful and vibrant and fun and all of this. And here's what I'll say. You may think that those are silly questions, and you might think that your answer is super silly too, but it helps people get to know who you are as a person. So like when I went through that interview as a counselor, Kaylin, talked about her. She's the one who went to medical school. She was a counselor at the time, and she had let me know that like there was also another girl in their interviewing pool that also answered funfetti, right? But she was like, I'd be a funfetti cake because I like funfetti. And so there's a difference in that answer, right? And you might not think, well, you know, that wouldn't make a difference, but like in some ways, if your personality embodies funfetti, show that, right? Show who you are a little bit, right? One of the questions I know that we've asked pretty recently is, if you could be any part of a pencil, what would you be and why?
gonna be real. If y'all asked me that in my interview, I probably blacked out. But I remember the question that I got asked that was like, quote unquote, silly goofy, was Jeremy asked me if I could be a character on any TV show, what show and what character. And I think I said like Modern Family, and I'd be like the spinster aunt. Yeah. Something like that. Love that. And I feel like that's so pretty. Yeah. I didn't think about going into like depth though of like I'm funfetti because of X, Y, and Z and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's also not that like I'd be funfetti because I like funfetti. So what's that happy medium? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I would say, I think it's good to kind of like, well, I think for the TV character one, it's easier to kind of see what your personality would be based on how you answered that question. True. Whereas like saying like, so like the pencil one, for example, when we ask, you know, what would you be? We've gotten all kinds of different questions. Some people, which is also really interesting, ask mechanical or number 2 pencil, because it's like there is a difference in those. So we typically say, well, whatever pencil you think it should be, right? And so that in and of itself can give you kind of an answer. So like some people have said, I want to be the lead, right? Because that's, you know, that's the part that's writing down the ideas, that gives the ideas or whatever. Or I'd like to be the wooden part of the pencil because that's what holds everything together, right? Somebody said that they would be the metal part that holds the eraser and the like wood together. And I can't remember how they answered that.
I was going to say because it's crunchy. That's literally, I was like, what would I answer? I'd be the metal thing because it's crunchy and pointy and I like to fidget with it.
There you go. So yeah, just giving a little bit of explanation. I think when I interviewed for housing to be an RA, I knew, because I had friends that were RAs, when I went in my interview, they said they always ask the question, what kind of candy bar would you be and why? And they were like, don't give basic candy because everybody says Snickers, right? Because Snickers has everything in it, right? So I said, whatchamacallit? Because I was like, ooh, I'm going to be different. I'm going to make sure. But I also gave like an explanation as to like why. And so being able to explain like, why would you pick this certain thing and how does it coincide with like your personality and who you are and how you work with people?
Because I'm a hustler.
Period. Yeah.
Our producer Jeremy is looking disappointed at me.
So yeah, but yeah, absolutely. So those fun questions are always like a great way to kind of break the ice and like kind of give that like, okay,
because then
like
you can kind of relate, because then like there were some people who were like, Modern Family, and just having that nod of approval and like commonality, it made me feel, a little. It's a safer place than I thought, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those questions are fun, and it's always interesting to see people's answers. I was talking to a guy at SOAR the other day, and I was asking him about on-campus jobs, and he was like, actually, I already have an on-campus job. What? And I was like, or not on campus. He already had a job. Sorry, not an on-campus job. But get an on-campus job if you want one. But he already had gotten a job that he interviewed for here in town. And one of the questions they asked him was if he liked beans in his chili.
That's a good question.
People are serious about their chilies. Yeah. So it's interesting. I think he said yes.
I think it's more of like who to not ask to bring the chili for the potluck. That's the information I'm gathering.
Well, yeah, like for me, I don't like chili. So
I forgot.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean.
So no Lyndie chili. All right.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, bring the chili. I just won't eat any. Doesn't mean it's bad. But yeah, I mean, those are really fun questions. But just make sure that you give a little bit of, an explanation, or at least that your answer gives enough of
information.
Yeah. And that's just with any of your answers to interview questions. Yeah. Make sure that they're really well-rounded. Again, clear, concise. Always ask for clarification if you aren't sure, or even asking them to reword the question. Maybe if something's a little weird or maybe you don't really understand, asking and just saying, can you reword that? Do you mind
kind of get some more context on the situation, things like that.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask those things by any means.
What's another do?
So etiquette in general, right? Like interview etiquette is really important. I'm a hand talker, so like try not to fidget, right? That can be really hard not to do when you're like used to that. I would say also, as far as etiquette goes, we talked about this last time, like your phone, make sure that your phone is off or put away or not on your person. Another thing with etiquette that I think a lot of people don't realize is be kind to every single person that you talk to.
Yes.
Every person, from the person that greets you to the janitor in the hallway to maybe somebody that you might be running into in the bathroom. Always be on, right? And have that professional presence about you.
Yeah.
Because if you're treating the person that's like the assistant or the secretary, right, that's getting the people that are going to be interviewing, it's important that you are kind to them, right? Because that in and of itself makes a first impression.
100%.
So that can impact you greatly. I mean, really from the time you get there to the time you leave, you want to make sure that you're exuding that professionalism and that confidence for sure.
You want to make sure that you're not chewing gum.
Oh my gosh, don't chew gum.
I swallowed that gum. When I walked into this job interview for this position, I had gum in my mouth because, my tummy hurt.
Or
I
mint.
need some gum.
Don't put your mint in and chew it and eat it before you get in there. Yeah, nothing distracting. You don't want anything to be super distracting that's going to take away.
In the last episode, the
jewelry.
bangles, the jewelry. Trying to think of other wearables that might be maybe a hat.
Yeah, don't wear a hat.
Yeah, just don't wear a hat.
Yeah, I would say don't wear a hat. Don't wear a hat.
Does anybody wear a hat?
I don't. Some people do.
No, it was like a callback to.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry. And follow up.
Yes.
Send a thank you.
I wish I would have done my follow up. Honestly, I didn't.
Thank you.
But now I know. But
personalize those thank yous too.
Yes.
If you are on a panel interview, if you can email every single person in that panel, like I know it feels like overkill, right? But just a simple like, thank you so much for your time today. I so appreciate it, right? Or whatever can make a big difference.
Oh yeah. Because a lot of the times, if you're in a panel interview, those people may not have offices right next to each other or even next to yours in the future. And so just having that one-on-one, thank you is really helpful. And there's a timeline for sending this follow-up.
I would say, so if your interview's in the morning, that afternoon, maybe that evening, you can send it the next day too, but no more than 24 hours, I would say, for sending your thank you note.
It doesn't have to be long, just short and sweet.
Yeah,
send
absolutely.
it on over. Now make sure you're sending it from like a good email address, right? You don't want to send it from like, I love books. Or something like that. That's not that bad, but you guys can use your imagination to imagine less professional emails.
Right, yeah, make sure it's your professional one.
Have a professional email signature, those kinds of things. Don't have it say, thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate your professionalism. And then it say like, sent from iPhone.
Yeah.
And that's all this is at the end.
And also be on time. Like, make sure that you show up at least 5 minutes early.
But not too early.
Yeah, not too early. Not like 30 minutes early, obviously. But show up early enough to where there's time to kind of get settled in a little bit. And then all of that. But don't show up late or miss the interview. I've had experience where people miss an interview and then they call back and say, hey, I want to reschedule, and 9 times out of 10 they're probably not going to reschedule with you because they scheduled that time on purpose. And that's you're wasting the time of the people that have scheduled this interview. So when you are not showing up especially unless you have a reason to, right? If you are sick that morning or you have a family emergency or something like that, absolutely send an email beforehand and say, hey, I sincerely apologize. Unfortunately, here's the situation. Is there any way that I could reschedule? When you do stuff like that and you put forth an effort to say, hey, I recognize that I'm not going to be able to make it today and I sincerely apologize, but I still would like to pursue this opportunity if it's available. Most of the time people are going to go, yeah, absolutely. We'll reschedule. We'll figure it out for you. Yep. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So many do's.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things that you could.
So many do's. There's also a lot of don'ts, right?
There is a lot of don'ts.
And we'll go over that.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
Our next episode.
Yeah, but as far as like tips, just make sure that you are clean, that you look your best, that you feel your best, that you come prepared with all of the things that we've told you to bring your things,
and it's cliche, but dude, just be yourself.
Be yourself.
Just
absolutely.
be the best version of you.
Absolutely.
That's all we ask.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. Well, thanks for joining us for our third interview episode, mini series, whatever. I can't remember the official title. Thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. And if you need help with anything interview related, you know where to find us. Bye. Bye.
I'm starting to think all that restaurant experience on your application was a lie.
You wrote Roku resume.
Well, why you do it then, baby Billy? Well, because I'm selfless.